What's up everybody, Arthur here. There is a Switch sale going on right now. They are calling it the Big O Super Sale for some reason, and it's a rather meaningful one for two reasons. A lot of first-party Nintendo titles are included, which is kind of rare. Nintendo is very stingy with discounts on their own games, and second because the sheer number of titles on discount this time is ludicrous. There are over 2,000. I don't think I've ever seen so many titles on discount at once, and many of them are lesser known games getting big discounts. And this is the focus here. This is from the void. Lesser known games is our thing. So I'll go through those first and I'll close with the Nintendo published games. I hope this can help you out in taking advantage of the sale. So let's get to it. Welcome to the channel. This is From the Void. Let's begin with Scourgebringer. This deserved way more attention than it got, in my opinion. It's an excellent action roguelike with one of the smoothest gameplays in the genre for sure. Roguelikes have been kind of flooding the market recently, which is not such a great thing because it's hard to find one with a well-made balance, but Scourgebringer certainly fits the smaller pool of excellent roguelikes. But that's just if you're up to the challenge, because it's a rather relentless game, presenting a real tough challenge. The progression comes when you defeat a boss, but despite the difficulty, the gameplay here is immediately enjoyable and addictive, with constant hectic action, which will certainly appeal to a hardcore action fan. Do check out Scourgebringer. It's currently 45% off, going for $9.34. Next is Panzer Paladin. This one takes heavy inspiration in Mega Man, in graphics, music, and game structure, where you can choose which area to tackle in whichever order you want, but it also has a good amount of particularities. You control a mecha pilot, you can eject from it and explore the stages as a human, and with the mecha you have access to a big number of different melee weapons, opposite to the ranged combat typical of Mega Man. The weapons have durability, a la Breath of the Wild, so you are always trying out new ones, which I found really cool. This is a great side-scroller action game, totally worth the $9.99 price, 50% off. Following up with Astray. This is a rather obscure game, but undeservingly so, because this is a great platformer with puzzle and exploration on the side. The blob you control soon learns a lot of new abilities, making the mobility in this game really enjoyable and a highlight for sure. Astray is a really cool one, give it a go. It's currently half off, going for $7.49. Then we have Neuro Voider. This is a pretty cool roguelike twin-stick shooter where you can customize a lot of things, choosing between different robots to control and tinkering with a wide range of different weapons and robot parts. It also has a few RPG mechanics which go really well with the gameplay. Pretty fun and addictive game with a great soundtrack and pixel art graphics. Neuro Voider, check it out. It's pretty cheap now, 75% off for $3.49. Next is 2064 Read-Only Memories Integral. This is an impressively well-written, point-and-click visual novel with a bit of a non-intrusive investigation gameplay in a very interesting futuristic setting filled with complex characters, sociological discussions, and a rather engrossing plot. If you're into visual novels, this is an absolute must-play in my opinion. It's a bit expensive though, even with the 25% discount going for $15.48. Next is Unruly Heroes. This is a pretty awesome side-scroller action platformer with 4 characters to control. They are drastically different from each other in terms of both combat as well as movement. The graphics and music are also big highlights here. This is certainly nothing groundbreaking, but a solid action platformer for sure. Well worth the $7.99 discounted price. Following up with Ikenfell. This is a pretty solid RPG with a lot of throwbacks, especially to Super Mario RPG, in that it has the same timed inputs to increase your damage and improve your defense, and with the simple but effective item and equipment system of that game. I really enjoyed Ikenfell, including the difficulty that can present a good challenge, the graphics, which are simple but enjoyable, as well as the story. This is a hidden gem in my opinion, a great option for fans of old school RPGs, especially now that it's at the lowest price yet of $11.99. Next up is Cyber Shadow. This is a terrific retro-style side-scroller action game that takes inspiration in the old Ninja Gaiden titles, but modernizes all the right things. The challenge here takes center stage. There are some very tricky sections to pull off, but differently from the old school games, it doesn't over-punish you for failing, and it never feels like a chore because of the outstanding level design in this game. When you first start playing it though, be aware that it feels underwhelming because of how simplistic the gameplay is at first, but you will unlock several new abilities that introduce very clever new mechanics that drastically improve the gameplay. Trust me, this is an excellent game in terms of music, level design, and gameplay. It's currently 15% off, going for $16.99. Next is violent and awesome Ape Out. This is a stupendous indie game, and even though it got a good amount of traction and great reviews when it came out, I feel like it just faded away soon afterwards. So I think this is a bit on the underappreciated side because Ape Out is awesome. It looks and sounds great, and the gameplay is tight. You can either push enemies violently into walls or each other, or you can hold them or other things to protect yourself against incoming bullets. This gameplay is pretty well balanced and loads of fun. There's also an extra mode where you have to break into the facility, go all the way inside, and then escape. Ape Out is currently at the lowest price ever, with a 75% discount at $374, which is a real bargain for the quality here, so waste no time. Next are the Mulana games. Those are retro-style side-scroller action platformers, also full of puzzles and especially cryptic stuff. Yeah, these games really don't hold your hand almost whatsoever, and I'm sure that's something a good part of the audience is not going to enjoy. You will feel lost in the beginning and for a good amount of time. In their cores, these games are mostly about exploring and conquering the maze dungeon beneath the village, which is full of traps, enemies, and secrets. But you will have to figure things out for yourself here and will fail a lot until things start clicking, and the games become immensely satisfying after that. If you know you like this kind of game, this is a great time to pick up La Mulana 1 and 2, where 1 is currently at the lowest price ever of $7.49 and 2 is $14.99. Following up with Speed Limit. This one is crazy, there is almost no context here. It's just run to the right, killing whoever is on your way on a moving train. The coolest thing about it is the level design. In the beginning, you will fear that the game is gonna be repetitive, but it keeps throwing new and unexpected things your way. Not only new enemies with different patterns, but also tunnels that turn off all the lights. Then you're forced to go up to the train's roof, which will introduce completely different obstacles, like having to duck below passing signs and jump over gaps. Then the neighboring train shows up and there are guys there too, shooting at you. It's crazy hectic and hard as hell, but also addictive and rewarding. Really cool game, Speed Limit. Give it a go, it's totally worth the mere $1.99 price, 80% off. Next we have the Mighty Switch Force collection. This is a compilation of 3 games, 4 if you count that one of them has the original and remastered versions here. They are Mighty Switch Force 1 and 2, Mighty Switch Force Hyperdrive Edition, and Mighty Switch Academy. These are all awesome action platformers from WayForward, where the protagonist is sometimes a cop, sometimes a firefighter, and sometimes an academy instructor. The Switch aspect comes from the ability to turn on or off platforms and other things in the stage with the press of a button, which makes for a real fun gameplay. Academy changes the camera perspective, making the entire stage visible at all times, which allows for some cool ideas to be implemented, while the others have a more traditional platforming style. These are very worthwhile games for fans of platformers, and you can grab them all for $9.99, 50% off. Next is Langrisser 1 and 2. These are rather obscure strategy RPGs, remade versions of games from the 16-bit era that hold up their value really well today. They do carry some dated old-school aspects, the battles may feel too long, but they compensate with a solid story, cool characters and classes, and more importantly, a well-balanced gameplay with an interesting battle system depicting each small battalion as a unit. These are underappreciated tactical RPGs, well worth a fan's time. And also, 2 was never localized outside of Japan before this collection came out. Langrisser 1 and 2 is getting a substantial discount, going for the lowest price ever of $19.99, 60% off. Next is Superliminal. This is a really interesting first-person puzzle game where you can bend sizes of objects through the magic of forced perspective. It also has a very compelling message to the player by the end. Although not a very long game, this is a must-play for puzzle fans, and it's looking and playing great on the Switch. It's currently half off, going for $9.99. Next up is action-packed Steel Assault. This game's structure is heavily inspired in Contra games, but your character has a whip as a weapon instead of a gun. Another highlight is the grappling hook that can be used in most surfaces, with which you can create a rope line to hang on to, and the game will force you to use this in many different and clever ways. The gameplay is awesome, and so is the entire presentation, but be advised that this is a real short game. If you just want to see the story through on normal mode, this will last you only about 1 hour. It's currently 50% off for $7.49, which feels a bit more in line with the game's duration. Next is the rather obscure They Bleed Pixels. This is an action platformer with a lot of gore, hence its name, and a weird control scheme with your attacks changing depending if you're standing still or not, if you're holding the button or not, which can take some time to get used to, but the level design here is actually really good, making the moment-to-moment gameplay feel great, both in the platforming as well as in the action. And right now the game is at the lowest price yet, real cheap at mere $199, 87% off. Following up with Huntdown. This is a side-scroller shooter with a little bit of platforming and exploration to find some collectibles and nothing else. But it nails the gameplay, let me say that right now, to the point where I can safely say that this is one of the best side-scroller shooters out there. There is a really cool balance between long and short-range combat where both you and the enemies can hide behind obstacles and inside open doors in the background, but that doesn't protect you against incoming melee attacks. This really changes the dynamic of the action here, and the boss fights are freaking awesome in this game, really varied and creative. The whole game can be played in co-op, which is great too. This is a shooter that comes close to perfection in gameplay in my opinion, so if you're into them, do not skip Huntdown. It's going for the lowest price ever, 66% off at $6.79. Following up with mesmerizing hidden gem Gorogoa. This is a puzzle game that totally stands out with its gorgeous interactive hand-painted murals, incredibly meticulously detailed, allowing for stunning zoom-ins which are tied to the gameplay mechanism itself. The use of color is also incredible, closely linked with the gameplay as well. This whole game is a true work of art, while at the same time providing a clever and mind-bending puzzle gameplay. The player can interact with the paintings by moving them in a 2x2 grid and by zooming in, out, or panning the camera a little. While doing so, you will find that some murals interact with each other, changing the scenes and allowing the main character to move along in his search for knowledge. This is one of the most artful and ingenious games ever, so don't miss the chance to grab it for the lowest price yet, 70% off, going for $4.49. Next up is Sayonara Wild Hearts. This is a really cool game. It's hard to place in a category. I guess it's like a racing game against obstacles more so than anything else. It's all about fast reactions, placing yourself in the correct position, and learning the stage and the enemy's patterns. But it does all that in the coolest way possible, always changing the gameplay in significant ways from one stage to the next. Plus the music and graphics are fantastic throughout. This is a must play in my opinion, especially at the lowest price yet on the Switch of $7.79. Next is a very special one, Kentucky Route Zero TV Edition. This is a point-and-click visual novel with little to no actual gameplay to be found, so only consider this if you really enjoy this kind of game, because there is a lot of reading here, and I really mean a lot. But if you do, Kentucky Route Zero has an engrossing story to tell. It's guaranteed to make you think about how people justify morally gray decisions, how corporations see people. It touches on friendship, vices, and ultimately mortality. It's beautiful. Certainly a masterpiece, although surely not for all audiences. It's well worth the 40% reduced price of $14.99. If you've been with me for some time, you've seen this next one, and I will ask you once again, turn up the volume for Everhood. This looks like it, but it's not a rhythm game. You have to avoid the notes that come in rather than hitting them at the correct time. So you just need reflexes and not a good sense of rhythm. And this is a fantastic battle system, unique, creative, and loads of fun. You can move between the 5 lanes or jump over the notes. Later you can also absorb them to send an attack back. This game is fantastic, a must play in my opinion, and is currently at the lowest price yet for $9.99. Following up with UNSIGHTED. This is an isometric style action adventure with a lot to offer, and I'm not just saying that. This game has so much going on for it, it's impressive. The story here is rather interesting. You control Alma, who is an automaton, basically a robot given sentience just like a human, while the enemies here are the humans, who are pretty much succeeding in draining the source of life for the automatons, and that affects the gameplay. Both you as well as the NPCs have an expiration date. The catch is that you run across items to replenish that energy, which you'll have to choose to keep to yourself or give to NPCs, especially the ones that were already close to dying, or rather becoming mindless machines, which are called unsighted. Gameplay wise, the action is superb, however the control scheme is difficult to learn. You have access to several different types of equipment, different weapons, cogs that grant you temporary bonuses, and chips that give you permanent perks. And I am really summarizing here, there's a lot more going on in this game. I highly recommend Unsighted. It's now 30% off, going for $13.99. Moving on to Aegis Defenders. This one is kinda different. It's divided into the exploration phase, where you will be moving along, killing enemies, doing a little bit of platforming and puzzle solving, very standard stuff, but in single player you switch between your characters, which is cool. Then the next phase turns the game into a tower defense. You position turrets and traps as fast as possible and will have to hold your base against incoming waves of enemies. Pretty cool game here and rather cheap now at $4.99 with a 75% discount. Next, we're talking about the Legend of Tianding. I covered this one a couple of times already. It's a really good looking side-scroller action platformer with a compelling story and setting, taking place in 1909 Taiwan. It's based on a real story too, which is cool. But for sure the best aspect of the game is the action. Liao can use his kung fu moves both for combat as well as for platforming and exploration, and they refine the gameplay really well, so this is great. This is also a tough game, especially in boss fights, which are a big highlight here. I feel like no one discovered this game yet, which is a real shame, so do check it out. It's currently 35% off, going for $12.99. Next is Brutal Valfaris. This got a good amount of recognition, but it's still underappreciated in my opinion, because this is a rather awesome side-scroller action game with a huge amount of violence and gore, and a hellish heavy metal setting, both in music as well as in graphics. This is from the same developer of Slain, back from Hell, also on sale, and they share a lot of similarities, including the difficulty, which is brutal in both. Valfaris though is way better balanced and more nuanced, and a great game, but if you like one, you probably will enjoy the other as well. Valfaris is currently 75% off for $7.49, while Slain is 84% off for $2.99. Next is Evergate. This one got some criticism when it came out due to some similarities with the Ori games, especially in the presentation, but it's got a whole personality of its own, so never mind that criticism. It's actually an excellent puzzle platformer that evolves into several new styles, all incredibly well made, and a great game throughout. You can look online for confirmation and receive 8s and 9s all around, and it's incredibly cheap, a great bang for buck here, especially with the 55% discount, making it the lowest price ever of $4.49. Next is underappreciated platformer Splasher. This is a brilliantly well-designed game, in the level layouts, in the controls, and in the gameplay mechanics. Splasher is a fast-paced platformer reminiscent of Super Meat Boy, where depending on what type of paint is coloring the wall, you may bounce or stick to them. On top of that, you soon unlock the hose, with which you can wash away the colored ink from the surfaces, kill enemies, as well as use the colored ink you unlock one at a time to paint the surfaces as needed. Splasher is a top-quality 2D platformer, a must-have for fans of the genre in my opinion, and there is a huge incentive to get it now for mere $3.74 with a hefty 75% discount. Now this next one is something else. This is Songbird Symphony. It's a mix of exploration with a tiny bit of platforming and puzzle solving, but the star of the show is for sure the rhythm-based gameplay, and it really shines in that aspect because of the presentation during the rhythm sections. Every single section is widely different from the previous one, making each one incredibly exciting and engaging. You keep unlocking new notes, which translates to new button presses, increasing the challenge. The exploration and platforming also feels welcome, and it's all very delightful. And since I see no one really highlighting this game out there, Songbird Symphony truly deserves a spot on the list, so do check it out. It's currently at a whopping 75% off for mere $4.24. Next is Umihara Kawase Fresh. This is an excellent physics-based platformer in a long-running series where the gimmick is that the protagonist has a line hook that she can attach to any surface, and this is used in many interesting ways, transforming the platforming gameplay into something quite unique and challenging, and it's currently 50% off, going for $19.99. Following up with Full Metal Furies. This is a really cool brawler, best played in multiplayer, but also a lot of fun in single player, as you can switch between two characters which you can pick from a number of different classes with widely different strengths and weaknesses. The gameplay loop is simple but effective. After each level you can improve your odds in the settlement by buying stuff, and then back to more brawler action. Pretty cool game, and it's getting a sizable discount of 70%, making it $5.99. Next is Crumble. This is a really fast-paced platformer where your blue slime guy can use his tongue to grapple things and keep on rolling. The movement here is pretty cool. It's not a perfect game, but well worth the $9.74 price, 35% off. Moving on to Heave Ho. This is a really quirky game. It's okay in single player, but far better if you have at least one person to play this with. Heave Ho is a physics-based platformer where you control the creature's arms, moving them with the circle pad, and each shoulder button is used to grab surfaces with each respective hand. It's all about understanding the momentum to reach the goal. Of course, things will be on your way, several obstacles, bonus stages appear randomly, and if you take too long to beat a stage, a giant llama walks in and farts all over the screen and you can't see a thing. This is a great party game, totally worth the $3.99 discounted price. Next is Broforce. This is really cool. You control one of many bros, each one based on an action movie hero, especially from the 90s, and each with their specific weapons widely different from each other and all really fun to use. The gameplay is fast-paced, full of violence and completely mindless, but rather enjoyable. Even better in co-op multiplayer. And right now it's at the lowest price yet, with a 75% discount going for $3.74. Next is a rather obscure platformer, Wunderling DX. Looking at it, this may seem just like a basic platformer with an ugly protagonist, but the story here is kinda cool. This little guy is like a Goomba, the lowest of low classes of enemies. It has all the limitations of that type of enemy, such as being forced to walk back and forth aimlessly. However, this specific underling has been granted one ability, and one only, to jump. So with just that ability, you have to guide it through the stages in search of a way to defeat the hero, Carrot Man or whatever. It's a funny premise, and so is the story and characters' interactions. Check Wunderling out, it's currently very cheap, going for $3.74 with a 75% discount. This next one is a first-party title, but it's a fairly lesser-known one, so I decided to feature in this first section. We're talking about Time UFO. This is a rather fun game where you control a little UFO with a crank that has to stack all manner of creatures and objects to meet varying objectives, like stacking them as high as possible, or balancing them out between two sides, and much more. It's a rather well-made game that came out to mobile first and later to the Switch. It's going for $6.29 with a 30% discount. Next are all the Mario games on sale. We have Super Mario Odyssey, Super Mario Maker 2, Paper Mario The Origami King, and Ubisoft's Mario plus Rabbids Kingdom Battle. I don't need to say much about those, right? Especially Mario Odyssey, which is probably one of the best games ever and my favorite 3D Mario game. Super Mario Maker 2 is a big step up from the original. It also received a lot of attention for a good time. Paper Mario The Origami King may not be the RPG focused game most people were hoping for, but it's still a fun time with a different combat style that is interesting despite outstaying its welcome a bit. And Mario plus Rabbids is a rather great strategy shooter mixing two unlikely franchises that is soon getting a sequel. This last one is of course not a first party game, but it made more sense to place it with the other games featuring Mario. Next we have Astral Chain. This is a really cool game developed by Platinum and published by Nintendo, with one of the most awesome combat mechanics in recent times, where you are tied to the legions and can actively control both the human as well as the legion creature in combat, in a really cool and dynamic battle system with well implemented controls. This game received great scores all around, and it's a must for action fans. It's currently 30% off for $41.99. Next we have Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze. This is one of the best side-scroller platformers of all time in my opinion. It's simply excellent in every single way, including the post-game content, when you unlock hard mode in which you can only have one Kong at a time, which at the same time make it more difficult because one hit kills you, but it also allows for each Kong to show their true potential, with Diddy and Dixie being able to move faster and fly longer, for instance. It's pretty awesome. It changed the game completely to an even better one in my opinion. This is a must-play for platforming fans, and it's 30% off at $41.99. Moving on to Pikmin 3 Deluxe. This is a delightful game through and through. It's actually my favorite Pikmin so far, and this deluxe version improves it even further, adding new content, including the DLCs already in the game, which unlock several stages, plus Captain Olimar and Louie from the previous games. And gameplay-wise, the Pikmin games are pretty much genius in my opinion. I can't see anyone disliking it. It has pretty much a universal appeal in terms of gameplay. Highly recommended game right here, especially with the 30% discount going for $41.99. Next is The Legend of Zelda: Link's Awakening. This is another rare game to see getting a discount. It's of course the remake of an already excellent Game Boy game, or rather the DX version for Game Boy Color, as the optional dungeon from that version is included here. It also brings a lot of new things to the table, enough to even justify a purchase for those who already played through one of the original versions, especially now with the reduced price of $41.99. And that's it. I hope you found this informative, entertaining, or both. I wish I could have covered more. There are many other games that are worth mentioning, but the video was getting too long to produce. In the future I can do a video like this faster because I am amassing a good catalog of games, footage, and music, so stay tuned for more. And if you like this and would like to support the channel, you know what to do. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.